Hello everybody. In today's video we are going to talk a little bit about the ego, how to transcend the ego, and this should be the proper understanding of how to consciously understand our personality, because usually we hear people saying or teaching things like, oh, how to overcome your ego, how to destroy your ego, how to free yourself from ego. I say that all of these postulates are all wrong. We can never get rid of our ego. On the contrary, we have to stabilize our ego and we have to transcend the ego. But the human being can never get rid of his ego for obvious reasons. But to have a clear understanding of what is ego, that should be the first question that we have to ask ourselves. Ego, but what is ego? And sometimes we have the wrong perception of what the ego is and how the ego is useful and how it could be in detriment of our personality and our behavior in society. To start, the very definition of the word ego, it comes from the Latin. And from Latin, ego simply means the I. I is who I am internally. And it's obvious that we cannot get rid of the ego because we cannot get rid of ourselves. We cannot get rid of who we are internally. And let's have then a clear explanation of what is good ego and what is bad ego. And this is what the bad ego is the one that we should stabilize, shift the energy from that negative side and utilize it for the good ego. Now, of course, we know the famous psychologist, the famous doctor Sigmund Freud, who came with this theory of psychoanalysis, in which he studied deeply the personality psychology of the mind and mental disorders. And of course, he came with this famous theory of the three parts of a human personality, what he calls the id, which comes from Latin, which means the it. The id, the ego and the superego. The id, as I said, comes from Latin, means it, and is present at the very first stages of our existence. When a baby is born, the id is present in the sense that is basically the natural drivings that we have, the natural needs that we have. For example, food. These are unconscious things that we need. When a baby is hungry, he will cry. So this is something natural, unconscious that we need. We need food, we need love, we need, I don't know, many other things like that. When we are babies, we recognize that these are just basic natural things that we need. This is basically what the id means. And this is something that we keep throughout our lives, because unconsciously we know if we are sleepy, we need to sleep, something natural. If we are hungry, we need to eat, we need love, and many other things. Then he explains what the ego. The ego, as I said, comes from Latin and means the I. And in this case, is when in adolescence, in the, let's say, I don't know, 12 until 20 something years, that the individual is trying to know who I am. The ego, the I. We're trying to develop our personality. What is it that I want to be in life? This is the stage in what we call pleasure-seeking motives. We are trying to build our own personality. We are trying to find our place in society. And we then come to realize that we cannot have everything that we want in life because there are rules in society. This is basically what the ego means. It's our interaction, trying to know ourselves, to build ourselves, to find our real identity, our purpose, the meaning of life, in a context with society, and understanding that the ego is limited by society and we cannot obtain everything that we want because there are rules and limits in society. Now, why cannot we have everything that we want? This is the superego. Superego means simply beyond or transcending the ego and understanding why we cannot have everything that we want in our lives. This is basically the three stages of personality that Sigmund Freud explains in his famous theory of psychoanalysis. And of course, we have other great psychologists like Jung or Jean Piaget, who came other with different theories, similarities about personality traits. But the point here that I want to bring something new. I want to shift this understanding and say, like I said from the beginning, we don't have to destroy our ego. Like some people think the ego is something bad. No, the ego is not bad, because the ego is the I, and you cannot destroy who you are. You cannot kill yourself, but you can stabilize who you are internally. You can work on your personality. You can work on your behavior. And regarding this, we have to say that the ego is good up to certain age. Like other great psychologists explain, the ego is good up to 40 years old. After the 40, then if you have such a great ego, it's not good, because the ego at when you are young, the ego is the energy, the strength, the motivation that moves you, that in this case motivates you to move forward in life, to find the meaning of life, to find out who you are, to find what do you want to do with your life, who do you want to become. So even from a believer's perspective, the ego is that will motivate you to say, oh, I want to get closer to the Creator, I want to increase the quality of my prayer, the quality of my worship, the quality of my service. The ego is that is going to drive you to do and say internally, I will try to improve my school grades, my GPA, or I will try to do and be the best I can in what I do, what I love, my work, my job. This is the good ego, is the motivation to be a good parent, good husband, good wife, daughter, son, etc. So this is the drive, the motivation that moves you forward to build on yourself and to improve yourself. Therefore, this is what we call good ego. Now, the bad ego, at the later stage in life, is that some psychologists, they say is something that is not right, because, like I said, the ego has a good side and a bad side, like everything in life. This is the balance, the harmony, how God created everything. And there was a great scholar from the past, a great sage, that said that when compliments and criticism doesn't affect you, then you would have transcended your ego. Why? Because here's the thing, here's the difference between the ego and the I, the bad ego and the good and the good ego, who you are internally. The bad ego, the ego in the bad sense as we usually understand it, is that who always wants for himself. I only want for me. And that kind of ego looks trying to inflate himself. And that kind of behavior, egoistic, we have another word here, that kind of egoistic behavior is not appropriate, and it's something that is negative, because this kind of ego always wants to feel some emptiness inside because simply doesn't know itself. But the good ego is that one who wants to give. Is that one who wants to get empty of himself to give to others, because when you empty yourself of all the trash that we have inside, then you can fill yourself back with all the good things. We replace all the negative traits, all the bad behavior, all the anger, all the jealousy, all the hate, all the intolerance that we have inside of us. We have to remove all these things and then replace it with something good, with happiness, with love, with kindness. We are working on our personality. We are working on our I, who I am. We are working on our good ego. This is what we call the transcendence of ego. Not the destruction of the ego, the transcendence of it. Because the ego will be present in our lives, like Sigmund Freud said, the id, that basic natural thing, unconscious things will be present. Basic needs like to sleep or to eat, for example, or to get married, or sexual relations, or to get closer to God. These are unconscious things that are normal and part of life. These are natural things. Now, something important regarding the ego is that regarding how sometimes we have to say that a bad ego is what creates in us a low self-esteem. Because sometimes our happiness for some people depends from the exterior. If someone says a good thing about me, I get inflated, I feel good. Look how you like. Of course, we all like someone to say good things about us, and for us, such a great, brilliant guy, such a great girl, brilliant mind, this, that, you feel good. But this kind of ego, like I said, in the early stages is good because it's the motivation force that drives you to improve in your life. Later on, when you get older and you think you are someone, then there's this unbalance in your life, and we should equilibrate our lives. For a believer who thinks that he's better than someone else, a servant of God who believes that he is more important than my brother or even any other creature created from God, if you consider yourself, because you are scrupulous in your religious observance, better than someone else, or that I'm going to get a reward from God because I am doing this and this and that, this kind of ego is not right. Because who am I to claim such things? The one who should acknowledge us as righteous and good persons is God himself. I cannot say that up to myself. That's a big ego. Inflation of our ego. This is the bad ego. Because the bad ego is the one who gets also angry. We like compliments, but when someone criticizes us, I don't like it. Oh, don't point your finger to me. Don't say these things to me. Me, such a great scholar, how much knowledge do I have? Who are you to tell me these things? I am such a perfect believer. I am such a perfect in the observance of my ritual, my prayers. You, and this pointing of, basically we're just trying to protect. This is how the psychology works, the psychology of the mind. We are trying to protect who we are internally, on who we think we are, because in reality, someone who gets angry because someone else criticizes him, simply someone who has a low self-esteem of himself. You are so weak internally that you simply feel attacked and you have to protect yourself. But why you have to protect yourself unless you are born vulnerable inside? And this is the big secret that people don't know who you are internally. But if you feel attacked, then that means you are vulnerable inside. You are weak, crumbling inside. That's why a good ego is the one that works on self-confidence. Self-confidence is the most important aspect here, because self-confidence comes from within yourself, meaning that yes, in the early stages is good, the motivation, but later on your happiness shouldn't depend on what someone else says about you. If someone says something good, you are in a good mood. Someone says something bad, then you are in a bad mood. What? Your happiness depends on the exterior from someone else? Doesn't even make sense. My happiness should come from within, from my self-confidence of knowing who I am, what is the purpose of my life, why I am alive, why God has chosen me to be in this world. And when you know who you are internally, nothing can affect you. That's why, like the great sage said, as I quoted, when the let's say the critics and criticism, but also compliments doesn't affect you, then you have transcended your ego, because your motivation is not coming from outside but only from God and from your self-confidence. You know who you are internally. Therefore, when you are reached to such level, you will be able to transcend all these negative aspects that we have mentioned: anger, jealousy, and this kind of nonsense behavior that simply affects our personality. It's simply an indication that we haven't purified our hearts. It's simply an indication that we have to work on ourselves and we have more things to fix and to do in our lives. And regarding this, it's important to mention that, of course, we live in society. Sometimes our interaction with our family, with our friends, with our beloved ones, how do I react when good or bad things happen according to what comes from the outside? This is something that we have to understand regarding the building of our personality. And this is why the ego, the I, must be equilibrated in this case. And like I said at the beginning, we have to find our own internal motivation, what drives us to move forward and to improve and to be the best that we can be of ourselves in our lives. And we also have to be honest with ourselves. We have to internally know who we are, and if someone criticizes us, then that means if that hurts us and we feel attacked, that's an indication that probably what they're saying is right. It's an indication that we know who we are internally, and we know that they have touched the cut, that they have touched where it hurts us. And maybe, yeah, we have a problem there. It's just that we don't want anyone to say what we have to do. But if they pointed to that, it's because we know that it hurts because it's true what the person is saying. So regarding this, we have to be conscious about who we are internally, be honest with ourselves, and be humble enough to say, you know, you have a point. You have a point in what you're saying. I will work on that. Thank you for your advice. And if it doesn't apply to you, okay. This is like I don't know if you have seen the matador, the famous Spanish bullfighters, right? How they have this thing with the red color and the bull that comes, and he just simply lifted and the bull goes, right? Well, in the same way, when someone, either with good or bad intentions, says something to you, a criticism, look, if it applies to you, accept it, thank you. If it doesn't apply to you, do like the bullfighter do. Lift the thing and let the bull go. If they're saying bad things about you, let it go, let it pass. This is what we call transcendence of the ego. We don't get angry. Why? Do I have anything to defend about myself? This person can have the opinion they want about me. I don't care, because I know who I am internally. And when we know who we are, there's nothing that could affect us. People always will have their opinion. Okay, that's their opinion. Me, I know myself. I know the I, and God knows who I am too. So it shouldn't, when we reach this stage, then we can say that we have transcended the ego, or the bad ego. And like I said, the ego cannot be eliminated, because the ego is simply the I, who I am, but the bad side can be stabilized, should be in equilibrium, and then we have to shift that energy, negative energy, into the service of the good one, and we will achieve happiness. Because the drive of our lives is not necessarily to go after happiness and the fulfillment of all pleasures all the time. No, the purpose of life is meaning. And when you do what is meaningful for your life, then you will be happy. If you are doing the best that you can in the service of your Creator, in the service of God, then what you're doing is meaningful for yourself. Never compared to other individuals. Always compared to who you were in the past. Not with someone else. Someone else have their own purpose in their life. They have their own path. Look at yourself and compare with yourself who I was yesterday and who I am today. And then you will have that happiness inside of you. You will find the meaning of your life. And that's the beauty of equilibrium, of cognitive, unconscious, self-acknowledging of who we are internally, knowing the purpose of our existence, doing what is meaningful for us, and achieving and finding happiness. And when we live a life in such a way, then I always like to say this, because wherever we go, people can see a light on our faces, a light on your face, and they can see your character. They can see that you have such a big heart, that you have such a clean heart, that there is so much light coming from such individual, from such personality, so much love, that just being in the presence of that guy or that girl or any sage, you feel so good, so humble, so motivated, because this is a spirit, this is an energy that you transmit to everyone else. This is something that I want to leave you to reflect and to think about. As always, thank you so much for your attention, and God willing, we'll see each other in the next video with more on Islamic topics, history, philosophy, and many more. Thank you so much, and we'll see each other in the next video.